how we discriminate against different groups. But first, I just want to talk about reading this chapter and studying this chapter has broadened my horizon because there are so many ways I had not thought about stereotypes and discrimination. What's up, you guys? Aditi, welcome back to our channel. Today it's another social psychology video about stereotypes and how we discriminate against different groups. But first, I just want to talk about eyeliner. I am learning, I am learning to get a wing. If you follow me on Instagram and if you see my reels, you would know that I have wing liners now. Anyway, today I just wanted to give like a brief introduction about stereotypes and stuff, and we will come up with like full-fledged stereotype, prejudice, discrimination, etc. videos. But today's topic is how members of different groups perceive inequality. So we know what stereotype means, right? You have this notion about a particular group, about their physical characteristics, about maybe intelligence, the color, their facial features and all of that, and you just put them in one group and just assume that, oh, this is how they are, or this is how they look like, etc., etc. But there are distinguishing characteristics as well, and stereotypes is not always great. So due to that stereotypes, people are do suffer from inequality. So there are different groups, right? There are men, women, transgenders, non-binary, homosexuals, transsexuals, cisgender, male, female. There is black, white, Hispanic. Then there in India you will have different race. So there's one from North India, one is Northeast India, North India, South India. There is also different castes as well. So all of these are different groups. So if I have to explain today's topic about inequality and how it is perceived, then if I take blacks and white, or if I take male and female, then it's about how these two groups perceive inequality. So let's begin. So inequality comes from stereotypes, and from stereotypes it goes to prejudice. Like you start thinking hostile, feelings towards a particular group, and from those hostile feelings we start discriminating against that group, and that's where inequality stems from. That's one of the ways, I think, one of the ways, but that's the only way we're going to talk about today. So we to understand the perception of inequality, there are two questions. So one is whether the discrimination is perceived to be legitimate, and second, how much progress has been made towards equality. So these two things, these two questions, they depend upon the members of the group. So both the groups, the majority group or the one that is perpetrating the discrimination, okay, they are actually treating the other group unequally. And the second is the one that is the victim of this discrimination, or the one that is experiencing the discrimination. To explain this, let's talk about wage gap. Okay, there is a big divide between the males and the females. Okay, if there is one job and if there is a male and a female doing both are doing the same job, then males tend to get more, they get paid more, and females don't get paid more. That's this inequality, right? That is inequality. So it's about whether both the male and the female, do they perceive this to be a legitimate discrimination, and do they consider this situation as a progress towards equality in a way. So maybe the man or both can think that, oh, but she is earning, right? The female she has a job, and so many years ago women were not even allowed to work. So this is like we are progressing, and we have progressed so much, for example. Whereas maybe the woman would not feel the same way because she is putting the same number of hours and she is doing the same kind of work and still she's not getting paid as much as the man is, which is inequality. So she is considering that, oh, there has not been so much of progress. I will explain all of this in the future videos because there are different parts of this, so I will explain it in depth, but today is just an introduction, like I said. So I hope you understand that these two questions. So this is how generally it is, that the majority group, or like, let's say whites and blacks, okay, so whites generally think about, oh, there's been so much of progress, whereas the blacks don't think that there has been enough progress, because they can see that unequal divide between the majority group and their own in group. So Kahneman and Tversky, I don't know how to pronounce his name, but they came up with a prospect theory that people are risk averse. So they tend to weigh, so when people are considering losses, like potential losses and potential gains, they tend to weigh potential losses higher than the potential gains. I just don't want to get political. That's why I'm just taking male, female, black, white examples. But I think if I talk about something related to India, I think that would make a lot sense and it'll be easier for you to remember. So if you actually open Pearson textbook, because generally people use Pearson textbook, तो उसमें text ये नहीं है, because I wrote this on my own, okay, because you don't have the caste system in US, right? So let's just take reservation. तो पहले reservation ऐसा कुछ नहीं था before independence and everything. I don't want to get into history stuff, so if I'm wrong, don't mind me. So let's just take 100 seats were to be open for everyone. उसमें से 10 to 30 seats, sorry, let's say 30 seats are been reserved for OBC, SC, ST. Now, okay, तो अभी what I'm trying to say is that पहले open categories got 100, now they're only getting 70 seats. So open category can consider this as a possible loss, a potential loss, because now they are not getting those 30 seats, so it is a potential loss according to them. But SC or ST के हिसाब से they were at a disadvantaged position before, right? They used to not get admission at all because of maybe economic reasons, or maybe because of educational reasons. They used to not get better education, उसकी वजह they should not earn, they should not score well, and that's the reason why whatever the reason was, they should not get admission. But abhi because those 30 seats are reserved for them, they are getting admission. So thoda equality, there's a greater equality now as compared to the disadvantaged position. So if they are considering this situation as a possible gain or a potential gain, then this could be considered, this greater equality could be considered as positive. Now if हम लोग ऐसे बैलेंस करके अगर देख रहे हैं that if the possible loss is evoking negative emotion, like intense emotion, not negative, intense emotion than positive gain for open category, then this greater equality will be considered negatively by the open category. But if this positive gain is considered, like is evoking lot of emotions, intense emotions, than the possible loss by the SC, ST, OBC people, then they will consider this greater equality as positive. So if I have to explain this same example in US में, तो US के context में, तो now we have Biden as the president, but पहले when Trump was the president, one of the first things that he said was that immigrants को बाहर भेजो, just throw them out. Why? Because the whites, the residents, the people of America are not getting jobs because the immigrants are getting it. So people like us and maybe Hispanics and maybe blacks as well. I'm not sure about the black Americans, but he was talking about all the Eastern culture wale people. So that is another thing, right? Because now that Indians and Chinese and Koreans and Japanese are getting their American jobs, people who live in America are not getting those jobs, so they are considering it as a possible loss for them. So it's the same example, but in a different context, in an American context. Another example, but in the same context, earlier women used to not have seats in parliament, let's say, or even in politics for that matter, because politics is very heavily driven by males. It's totally male dominated. But now I think there are 33 seats, I'm not sure, in parliament. So for them it may be considered as a possible gain for women, but for men they'll be like, now we just have 77, my maths is really bad, 77 seats for us, only 33 seats to nahi hai, so males may consider this as a possible loss for them. And due to this possible loss mindset or attitude maybe, and also because if people, let's take black and white, okay, if people consider the whites, okay, the majority group, if they consider themselves and they identify themselves by their racial group, by their in-group, then that is one of the reasons why there is more brutality, violence against the minority group. So there was another study conducted by Elbach and Keegan in 2006. To understand this possible gain, possible loss mindset about the in-group and the out-group. So they had whites and non-white participants, and they had to create graphs in 3 forms. So the participants had to draw these graphs, and they were told, okay, and they had to show the racism over the years in US universities, okay. So like how many students are actually getting admission and they are getting into US universities from 1960 to present. I think it's 1960 to present. So how there has been a racial change in the students that are in the US universities now. So the first graph was of minority gains and white losses. So they are saying minorities because Caucasians or whites are in majority in US and even Europe, but I was just going to talk about US here. Whereas Hispanics, Black Americans, and people like us, like Asians and Southeast Asian people, Eastern people or Eastern culture, so we are all of us clustered in minorities. So the first graph was minority gains and white losses, where the percentage asked to show was the whites percentage is going down and the exact same percentage of non-whites, that is minorities, is going up. Second was of white losses only. So the percentage of whites going down, that's all they had to draw. Third is minority gains only. So again the exact same percentage of minorities or non-whites increasing. The observation was that in the first, so minority gains and white losses, and in white losses only, in these 2 circumstances, the white participants saw that racial relations were at zero-sum outcome than the third condition, which was minority gains only. So when that was considered, so when they noticed white losses, so in the first 2 conditions there is white losses condition, right? So the first 2 circumstances where there is white losses condition, they perceived greater progress towards equality when it comes to minorities or non-whites. So what's happening here is that the white losses condition in the first 2 circumstances, due to that, the white participants think that there has been greater progress towards equality in terms like for non-whites or for minorities. Whereas when they only see the third circumstance where it's only minority gains, that's when they notice that there has not been enough progress. There is less progress, less equality. And this perception is not very different from the non-whites or the minority participants. So you can say that there is racial divide because of the way the majority group, or the whites in this situation, the way they perceive losses towards their own group. So if they perceive that the equality, the increased equality is going to be a loss for their own group, like let's say you are not going to get enough seats in admission, in parliament, in important places, you're not going to get houses, you're not going to get jobs or promotions. If there is going to be equality, and if the other group members are going to get all of these things, then there is a racial divide, there is inequality, there's more inequality, because they start treating these people differently. There is violence, racial violence even. And that's when these majority groups, they start opposing this kind of equality, and this is done irrespective of what impact it has on the minority groups. That is it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it, because being a woman in this world, in this Indian society even, I have been discriminated and stereotyped in a way, and I'm trying to break from all of that. So I have been um, aimed at in that way. So even then, reading this chapter and studying this chapter has broadened my horizon, because there are so many ways I had not thought about stereotypes and discrimination, and this chapter has actually broadened my horizon even further more. And that's the reason why I started making social psychology videos, because I thought that if it's done to me, maybe it will help you too, whether you are a psychology student or not, and you have just come across this video. Um, I hope you're not going to take this video differently, and you're just going to take it in an educational way and just open your mind a little bit, and see the world a little differently, because this definitely, and psychology subject as it's like per se, is making me view this world differently. So I hope it does the same to you. Subscribe for more such videos, because I am exhilarated right now that I'm done with it, and this topic is just amazing. I just can't stop talking about it. So like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you next Friday with another psychology video.